WebYeshiva.org. Sure for Leila Seder. We are now on Urchatz. Okay, what I'd like to do today in Shir is as follows. I'd like to have the first part of the Shir to talk about a little bit the halachot of Urchatz, some sources, some origins, actually quite interesting, and then talk about the other part of the Shir, about the famous idea. If I would have asked you, why do we wash hands? Again, before we even get into the Shir, the most famous Jewish answer. If I would have asked you, why do we wash our hands in Urchatz for dipping a vegetable in liquid, and during the year we usually don't, what's the answer you would probably tell me? Go ahead, hit those chats. Not trick questions, not trick questions. Just go. Choose everyone or just me. Why do we? All right. So we watch at the beginning of the meal all year long. That's okay. That's fine. That's great. And Urchatz is talking about for dipping vegetables, dipping vegetables in a liquid. All right. So we do Urchatz. Most people will probably say, let me just see some of the chats here. Okay, someone sent them privately. We do it so that people should ask. That's what a lot of us have been taught, and there are commentaries that actually do say that. We'll see as we go along where that comes from. But the bottom line is that it's a concept for all the Seder night, that we do things so people should ask. And where does that come from? I mean, it's a beautiful idea, and there are sources for it. So I'd like to show you the source for that based on the Abarbanel, of where we see in Leila said there that we do things so people should ask. So again, the first part, let's talk about the concept of Urchatz, and from there move on into doing things so people should ask where that comes from. Okay, let's get to work. Chulin, let's go. We begin in Chulin. And the first topic we're talking about in Chulin is, hey, why do we even do Netilat Yadayim? Well, wash for a motzi, we do Netilat Yadayim. Ever ask yourself, why? Why do we do Netilat Yadayim? Interesting question, right? So let's see what the Gemara says. Let's see where everything comes from. Amar of Idi bar Avin. I purposely chose over here Sfaria. I'd like to thank Sfaria tremendously. Use the Steinsaltz Koren version. So we have everything here all translated. Amar Ravidi bar Avin, Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Ashia. Netilat Yadayim lechulin mipnei srach truma. All right. So why do we do Netilat Yadayim? Because of truma. Something to do with truma. Truma, as we know, are holy holy foods, which we'll talk about in a second. For the Torah, really, truma is only for wheat and grapes, and the truth is also what's it called? Tirosh and Yitzhar, also for oil that comes from olive oil, but olive oil is rarely eaten with the hands, usually as oil. So the bottom line is, so we do Netilat Yadayim for truma. Interesting. Wait, but one second. I want to get this straight. Today, do we have truma? Let's just hit those chats so we get a little bit into it. Do we have truma today? Do people take food and bring it to the Kohen, and that food has holiness? Do we do such a thing today? Is there such a thing? Okay, so right, we see someone chatting privately. No, that's correct. Today we don't give any holy foods to the Kohen. Well, just 1 second. Do we have to take off? Just on a side note, just two interesting points. Do we have to take off truma when you go to the field and you harvest the field today in Israel? Of course, it's one of the mitzvot of Eretz Yisrael. Do you have to take off a truma from those from the crop? The answer to that is yes. Excellent. But what do we do with it? Do we give it to a Kohen? Do we give it to a Kohen? Do we give it to the Kohen? Can we take it and give it to the Kohen? No, we don't. Right? See someone chatting. Why not? Because you have to eat truma. Okay, give it to the Kohen, appropriate thing to do. We have to give it to the Kohen in a way that they can eat it in a holy manner. Well, today we're all tameh. we're not pure, so therefore we can't eat truma, so therefore you don't give it also. How do we know who a Kohen is? Interesting thing is that in the zoo, the biblical zoo in Israel, what they do is they take all the fruits and vegetables that are taken off for truma, and they sell the animals to a Kohen so they can actually feed the animals truma. Believe it or not, it's an interesting thing that they do over there. But anyway, bottom line is great. So we put truma, we don't give truma to a Kohen. Great. Time of the Beit HaMikdash, what did they do? Oh, wait, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a moment. Right? We're talking about bread. We're talking about just absolute bread, just plain bread. Okay. So in time of Beit HaMikdash, if you had wheat, you would have to give some of the wheat to who? Let's go. Time of Beit HaMikdash, right? You had wheat. You had a field. Who would you have to give some of that wheat to? Okay. You have to give some of that wheat, actually a certain percentage of it to the Kohen, right? So the Kohen would be eating bread which was holy. Would the Kohen have to wash their hands before eating their bread? And we'll see how this connects in a moment to what you're saying about dipping vegetables in water. We'll see in a moment how it connects, right? But let's talk about bread for a moment, okay? So you have bread. You have wheat in your field. You gave the Kohen some of that wheat. You gave him the truma. The Kohen now is holy wheat, makes holy bread, and before the Kohen goes to eat from that bread, the Kohen has to wash her hands. Why do they have to wash their hands? Why do they wash their hands? Something very interesting. If a person is pure, went to the mikveh, is pure, they can eat truma. They themselves are pure, but hands are always considered to be dirty. Very interesting. Always considered to be dirty because they are impure, to be more precise, because not dirty, word is impure, because they're always touching things. So there's a special halacha that even though you may have gone to the mikveh and you're 100% pure, you still cannot touch the holy bread if you haven't washed your hands. You have to take a vessel and wash your hands. Okay, quick summary. Time Beit HaMikdash, you had wheat. You had to give some of the wheat to the Kohen. That wheat is holy. The bread made from it is holy wheat, holy bread, holy bread. Can the Kohen eat from that bread? If they haven't gone to the mikveh, they aren't pure. No, God forbid. It's punishment of death, by the way. So you had to go to the mikveh. So the Kohen had to be pure. Wait, so why wash your hands? Because even though you're pure, your hands are not. Hands touch things. If you don't wash them, and Nachman's saying they're considered dirty if you're not washing them. Okay, good point. That's correct. Right. If you don't wash your hands just go around touching. Perfectly put, Nachman. So time Beit HaMikdash, before you would eat truma, you have to go and wash your hands. The problem was that no one was doing it because people ate bread and they went to the store to eat bread without doing a tilat yadayim. They just usually take bread and you eat it. That's the way you do it. So everyone was used to eating bread by just touching the bread and eating, and no one washed. It didn't exist. And then every once in a blue moon, a Kohen would get holy bread. It wasn't all the time. Most of the bread the Kohen ate were not holy. No, they ate regular bread like you and me, right? So every once in a while, a Kohen would go and take a piece of holy bread and eat it without washing their hands. And that's a serious problem. So Chazal sat down. What do we do? And they came along with the following decree. Since most bread is not holy, and therefore we're not used to washing our hands, so when we do get to the holy bread, no one will remember. They made a decree that everyone, Kohanim and non-Kohanim, everyone will wash their hands before eating bread. Why bread and not other fruits and vegetables? Because truma was, again, from the Torah. Truma, the contribution of truma is only for wheat, for grapes, and for olive oil. Olive oil is a liquid. You don't really eat it with your hands. Same for wine. You drink it. So the only one left is bread. All right. So the rabbis made a special decree to save the holiness of the truma, to save the kohanim, and kept forgetting all over the place, that everyone washes their hands. And well, once that takana was made, A lot of ideas are already behind it of a holiness and special, and bread is like a korban and the holiness of the table. A lot of other things were added on around that to such an extent that it's considered to be one of the big merits of eating food is Netilat Yadayim, and someone should be very careful to do Netilat Yadayim, and a lot of halachot around it. But this is the core of it. A lot of spiritual things eventually, like I said before, are built up around it, but nonetheless, this is the core. Okay, so why do we say a bracha? We say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Asher Kedishanu Mitzvotav V'Tzivanu. We were commanded to do Netilat Yadayim. Who were we commanded by? By the rabbis, to make sure that we don't desecrate truma. So it's a special thing to keep truma holy, which is very important. It's basically keeping the holiness in Am Yisrael. It's a very, very, very big mitzvah to keep holiness. All right. Now, a whole debate. Let's just see. We see it over here. So let's just see this one last time. Amar Avida bar Avid, Amar Abitzak bar Ashian, Netilat Yadayim lechulin mipnei srach truma. Let's just see the words and understand them. Netilat Yadayim lechulin, chulin from the word of chol, non-holy. Why do we wash hands for non-holy bread, regular bread? Because of strach truma, because of repercussion of eating truma. Okay, let's see the translation over here. All right. So therefore, people are not accustomed to eating without washing their hands, which would in turn lead to the priests to partake of truma without washing their hands, to be keeping the holiness. So far, so good. So far, so good. All right. Now, what happens if someone eats less than a kazait, very small amounts of bread? There's debates, there's arguments. If the halacha is only for a substantial amount of a kabitza, which is about the size of an egg, or we're talking about even a small amount, different debates and discussions of how much, how big of a piece of bread we have to wash. Well, if I would have asked you, do we wash even for a small piece of bread? You would tell me, yes, we do, which is what the Mishnah Berurah brings. I want to show that to you in a second. However, we don't say a bracha, so you should know. If you take a small piece of bread, less than a kabitza, actually, and you eat a very small amount of bread, you do netilat yadayim, but we don't say a bracha. There's a whole argument, you say a bracha on it or not. Now we get to what Yudi said about the varshi tipulo b'mashke ta'un netilat yadayim, something that we're dipping, we're not eating bread, we're taking a vegetable like in karpas, taking a vegetable and we're dipping it in a liquid. So, or right, we take depends on the minhag. Some take a potatoes, parsley, you dip it like in salt water. So we're dipping it in water. So why are we washing our hands? Well, let's see that over here. Okay. The origin here is from the Gemara in Psachim Kuftet Vav. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Rab Oshaya, Kol shetibulo b'mashke tarich netilat yadayim. All right. So Rabbi Elazar says, anything that you dip in water, you take a piece of potato, parsley, whatever it is, you're dipping it in water, you have to do netilat yadayim. And now comes the question, why? Well, does the Gemara say, just look at the Gemara, does the Gemara say anything? Let's go hit those chats over there. Does the Gemara say, and this is the origin of a lot of topics in halacha, does the Gemara here say why? Let's go. Hit those chats. Does the Gemara say why? Does the Gemara say why something which is dipped in liquid? Anything in the Gemara here? Not a trick question. Not a trick question. Okay. Does the Gemara mention anything over here? Oh, okay. I see a private chat coming in. The answer is no. That's correct. The Gemara does not say why. Just says you don't. Just says you don't. Well, I'm sorry. It doesn't say why. Just say you do. You wash your hands, and this is very not clear. Like why is that? So the Rishonim actually argues this. And some say, you know something? It's just like bread. Why in bread do we do Netilat Yadayim? Because we're afraid. What happens if if a Kohen goes to eat something which is of holiness, and their hands are not cleansed, and they touch water. Water is an interesting effect, where it actually takes the low level of impurity and actually raises it up one. So if the Kohen is going to eat anything that has anything liquid on it, it's not just the Kohen, by the way, is eating anything of holiness. If you're eating anything which is holiness to it, and there's water, and your hands again had that level like Nachman, like you said before, a certain level of considered to be could be dirty or impure, and the water now multiplies that impurity. So basically speaking, you're eating something, and that eating of it can make it impure. So some say it's just like bread. We needed to make sure that no one makes the mistake, and if you dip your hands and you didn't wash your hands, the level of impurity can rise. Therefore, one should wash their hands before touching anything with water. Some say it's nothing to do with the fact by bread. We just did it to make sure everyone's used to washing their hands. Nothing to do with being used to wash your hands. It's an actual problem. If in a time of Beit HaMikdash you touched water, multiplied the impurity in your hands, and you touched something which was pure, you made it non-pure. It was a real issue. So again, quick summary. The problem is, again, you touch water, it multiplies the impurity in your hands, which can actually take any holy food and make it impure. Okay. Are we doing this halacha, that anything you dip in water, are we doing it so that we remember to get used to washing our hands? It just like bread, right? We just do it to remember so we don't forget. Or is it because there was a real problem in the time of Beit HaMikdash that it was multiplying the impurity? Did the rabbis command to do it to get used to washing the hands? Or did the people just wash their hands to make sure they weren't impure? Okay. So believe it or not, this is actually an argument between Rashi, which, by the way, the Tosot, very interesting, brings this opinion of Rashi, and it vanished from our manuscripts. A lot of Rashi was written in the olden days. It was not written on the side of the Gemara like we have today. That's actually quite recent. Rashi used to write his comments on a notebook, and a notebook in Hebrew is called a kuntres, and in ancient Hebrew, even modern ancient Hebrew. So also doesn't call Rashi. Rashi says, he says the notebook, Peresh Hakuntres, the notebook says. So people used to have the original Gemara, and they used to have the notebooks. Now some of these notebooks got lost. This Rashi actually got lost. It got lost. So there's an argument of Rashi and Tosfot over here is, did the rabbis say, just to make sure no one forgets to wash their hands, make sure you wash your hands just like by bread, at which point it was a commandment of the rabbis, you then say a bracha? Or was there no such commandment? It was just, you wash your hands because you touch something of water, it multiplies the impurity in your hands, and you make something which is pure and pure. So it's just a technicality that only applies to the era of the Beit HaMikdash. Not today anymore. Not today. So quick summary. Today, and again, here's a question and a very Jewish answer, and we're about to wrap it up. Today, when you wash your hands for dipping a vegetable in water, right? Now, even if you use a fork, doesn't make a difference. If you cook touch of water, the standard is to use it without a fork. If you're dipping something in water, do you have to say a bracha on the washing of the hands? What's the answer? Hey, do you have to say a bracha or not? It's a classical Jewish answer. Okay? So when you wash for bread, do you have to say a bracha? Again, let me just hit the chats over there if you don't mind. All right? Let's go. Hit those chats. When you wash for bread, do you have to say a bracha? You do Netilas Yadayim, okay? Yes, for bread. Why? Why? Because we were commanded, Asher Kedishanu Vetzivanu. Who were we commanded by? By the rabbis. Why? Everyone should get used to washing their hands so we don't violate. Now, for dipping something in water, do we have to wash your hands? It says over here you have to wash your hands. Do you have to say a brach? And we'll see that some opinions today say you don't really have to, right? Right? Now, by the way, the Rambam brings, Nachman, help us out here. The Rambam brings, what does the Rambam say? Do you have to wash your hands? And do you have to say a bracha? What does the Rambam say? Nachman, so you say absolutely, right? That's yours? That's your line? Right? So the Rambam goes along and says, yes, that's it. It's the same thing like bread, same thing, exact same thing. You have to wash your hands. We have to make sure everything's holy. The rabbis commanded it. We're going to wash ourselves and everything else. Whether you're eating bread or you're dipping something in water, you're going to wash your hands because hands can be anywhere. And the rabbis said that everyone should wash their hands. We should just get used to washing hands. But some say, others say, no. This is a machloket. Some say, no. In bread, it was a special commandment of the rabbis to watch yourself because most, the truma is the most important thing, and truma was bread, and it was a special thing the rabbi said about watching the truma, the kohanim, but fruits in water in the time of Beit HaMikdash when everyone was holy, wash your hands. Today, we don't need it so much. So some say you don't have to at all. Some say you wash, but you don't say a bracha. And some say you wash and you do say a bracha. The Rambam says you wash and you say a bracha. The Vilna Gaon says you wash and you say a bracha. And some say you don't wash at all. And some say you wash and you don't say a bracha. So, classic Jewish answer. It's a big machloket. Okay, but you should know. Our opinion is say that you should. Most commentaries actually say that you actually should wash your hands regardless. Argument about bracha, Rama will say yes, Vilna Gaon will say yes, and a lot of others say no. I want to show that to you. Nachman, you're bringing here the Rambam, if I'm not mistaken, the Haggadah of Pesach of the Rambam, right? That's what it looks like. Okay, correct? That's what you're bringing for us over here? Right, where the Rambam says, and then you say, Anotil Daim of Chametz U'Matzah, right. All right. Oh, chapter 8 of Chametz U'Matzah. Well, okay, fine. He's explaining what you do in the Seder. Okay, that's the Rambam. Wonderful. There's also, of course, a debate and a discussion of how much. You should just know the topic's a little deeper than that. They want to know that, if you ate a small piece of potato or something less than a kazayit, then for sure you should have to say a bracha. There's a whole bunch of opinions of how much we take in the karpas. We take a little bit, or we take more. Some say less than a kazayit. Some say no, you take more than a kazayit. It's actually a whole topic of also about saying the bracha and so on and so on. But nonetheless, I want to just show you over here and then summarize all this, and then we'll go into the other topic of so you should ask, which is the other opinion. But I'm going to show you something really fascinating in a second. Let's first see what the Shulchan Aruch says. Says the Shulchan Aruch as follows. Okay, look at the Shulchan Aruch. When you go to eat bread, pat. Again, I brought here this Faria, who is amazing. Okay, everything here in English. When you come to eat bread, you wash your hands and you say hamotzi. So far, so good. We all know this. And you say a bracha, al tilat yadayim. But let's see over here what happens if you, first of all, if you eat less than a kazayit. The Shulchan Aruch says, some say you do, and some say you don't. So I'm just bringing up an interesting topic that even those that say you say a bracha when you dip something in liquid, actually depends if you're using less than a kazayit. A lot of them will say then you don't say it. Just be aware. It's not just clear cut on karpas, on urchatz. It's a machlokas. If you say a bracha or not, you'll say the bracha, but you have to have a substantial amount. The Rambam also believe holds that you should have more than a kazayit. But anyway, let's go on. Look what it says over here. Says the Shulchan Aruch, if you eat something that's dipped in the 7 liquids, or it's dipped in water, whatever it is, all right, then, okay, you wash without a blessing. That's how the Shulchan Aruch paskins against the Rambam. Okay, now look at this. Let's just see over here what's brought down in the Mishnah Berurah. I'm just going to touch base on just one line. Okay, right. He says as follows. Just if you ever get a chance to look in the Mishnah Berurah, you'll say like this. Why do we wash without a bracha? Why does the Shulchan Aruch pass without a bracha? Because the Shulchan Aruch did not hold, like the Vilna Gaon, the Rambam, that for sure you say a bracha. The Shulchan Aruch held that there's a debate and an argument. He didn't take any sides. And when you don't take any sides, you're lenient on brachot. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Because some of the Rishonim say you don't need the Tilat Yadayim for something which is dipped in mashke. Okay? And some say you do. So therefore, we do is that we stafek berachot la'akel. So we don't say a bracha. But watch this. The Magen Avraham says that the world, the Welt, right? The most people today don't wash. Vayesh them al misha yismochu, and they have who to rely on. And who is that? The opinions of the Rishonim that we just brought a second ago. But he brings that a lot of Achronim were more machmir in it, and you should know that the Vilna Gaon also says at the end of the day, the Mishnah Berurah says it's better. Okay, it's better that one does if one should. But the bottom line is those that don't the Magen Avraham brings, a lot of people can rely on it not to. Nonetheless, he says if you're eating less than a kazayit, for sure you don't have to be machmir on it at all. And this gives us a very interesting inkling to what's going on the Seder night. And with that, we flip quickly to the tour. And with this, we're almost done with this section. Look at the tour. The tour says something unbelievable. The tour says now, look at this. We take the vegetables. Okay, and before that, he says you wash your hands for dipping karpas. Why? Because everything that's dipped in liquid needs to be your hands to be washed. And you say a bracha. Well, if you say a bracha, so first of all, it also gives us an inkling that we're talking about you eat a more substantial thing in a kazayit. But he says, look at this. Rameir of Rothenburg writes that today, Ha'idna means today, we don't wash on something which is dipped in liquid. And therefore, he would not say a bracha, one second, and therefore he would not say a bracha on the washing of the hands. This is very interesting. So again, those say that you must wash and say a bracha. There are those that say, today we don't have to wash. And there are those that say, you know, you really should, but because of the argument, wash and don't say a bracha. And again, if you didn't listen to Kazayit, then you definitely don't have to. So you see this argument. You see this amazing, and the tour brings both opinions, and he says, therefore, you should do something to actually make yourself have to wash. But anyway, nonetheless. So if I were to ask you then, today when we dip karpas, we dip the potato, the parsley, whatever your minhag is, in water, do you have to do netilat yadayim and say a bracha? One word, which is what? Do you just have, only thing you have to have in your mind is just one word. Do you have to wash and do you have to say a bracha? One word, which is the classic, as we said before, the classic Jewish answer, which is, it's an argument. It's a machloket. Have that in your mind. And you should know. So we'll say a bracha. If you have more than a kazai, you wash, you say a bracha. Okay. But everyone today washes in Urchatz. Everyone. And that's something which is just 1 second. During the year, a lot of people don't. Most people don't. But in Leila Seder, everyone does. Why is that? Good question, no? So during the year, it's a machloket. For bread, everyone agrees. It's a special thing of the rabbis to make sure truma stays holy. And they make sure everyone does it. By the way, you may ask yourself, well, today there's no Beit HaMikdash. Why do we have to be in practice? And the answer is that we always live in our lives. Every second, the Beit HaMikdash can be built. So we want to train ourselves. That's actually what it says in Chazal. We train ourselves that every moment Beit HaMikdash can be built, we're going to be used to it. But that's it. So for bread, everyone agrees to do it, so we're used to it. No Beit HaMikdash now. We're used to it. We're all ready for washing hands when eating bread, so the Kohanim don't make a mistake. And we're keeping the sanctity of the truma. Wonderful. For dipping something in liquid, Argument. Some say yes with the bracha, some say no, a different argument. But in Leila Seder, everyone agrees that we're going to wash our hands, saying a bracha. That's still an argument. It's still an argument. But washing hands, everyone agrees. Why? So some opinions that say that today we don't have to wash our hands. So why does everyone say we wash our hands on the Seder night? Everyone agrees. Why? Where does that come from? One answer, which again most people aren't aware of, at the Seder night is a special level of holiness. So just like in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, people wash their hands to make sure they're holy. Same thing on the Seder night. We're in the extra level of holiness. So we do just like they did in the time of the Beit HaMikdash. There are other opinions. And by the way, even according to this opinion, also opinions that so that the children should ask to make the evening a lot more interesting, which we'll talk about in a second. What's that all about? There were a lot of communities, you see these minhagim, that the only one till this very day, that the only one that washes for Urchatz is the one leading the Seder. Let me just see what Bonnie's saying. Could it be that we are reliving the first? You know something? Bonnie's suggesting over here that we're reliving the first Pesach in those times. That's it's actually a very beautiful idea. Yeah, in Pesach we have on the Seder plate. I'll just prove it to you, right? We have something which reminds us of the Korban Pesach, right? Right, Bonnie? Right? We have on the Seder plate. By the way, we use a chicken wing so that people will not get confused that it actually is a Korban Pesach because chickens are not part of this Korbanot. But yeah, we're actually reliving. We're reliving Pesach. We're reliving that level of holiness. Beautiful idea. Beautiful idea. And some say against the people should ask, and therefore there's a whole lot of communities that their minhag is that the only one washing their hands is the one leading the Seder. Because it's more an idea than actual halacha. So again, the Rambam will say, of course everyone washes their hands. What's there to talk about? And most commentaries say, of course everyone washes their hands. But some say, no. Just the one leading the Seder washes their hands. Historically speaking, you should know that there was a minhag of people used to wash their hands. Nachman, I believe you brought that the very, very beginning. People used to wash their hands before eating, right? I think you brought in the very, very first chat. I think the Rosh brings it, everyone brings it. People used to wash their hands before Kiddush. That was the minhag. Before Kiddush, people washed their hands. So if you see where it says only the head of the Seder washes for Urchatz, it doesn't mean that no one washes their hands. It just means that they rely on the washing before Kiddush. But nonetheless, some communities have only the one leading the Seder because, again, you should ask. It's an idea. It's an idea, and therefore only one leading the Seder washes their hands. All right. So now we're about to get to the second part, where some say at Seder night, even though for all those people who are doing the year do not wash their hands and definitely do not say a bracha, okay, but they don't wash their hands. On Seder night, everyone will wash their hands. Why? One, that level of holiness. Two, as we said, so people should ask and be interested. Okay, and that's an answer, by the way, for a lot of things we do on the Seder night. That people should be interested in ask. And of course, you may want to ask yourself, where did that come from? I mean, it's a beautiful idea. Where did it come from, and why is that actually so important? So let me show you something absolutely fascinating brought down by the Abarbanel. Your Barbanel, I'll show you something really, really, really cool. All right. There are 4 sons. And 4 sons, if you ever want a nice Torah for the Seder night, just listen what their Barbanel shares with us. 4 sons, the Torah just brings a whole bunch of psukim talking about Yetziat Mitzrayim. There aren't truly 4 sons in the Torah itself. And the rabbis are teaching us an idea. 4 sons are using psukim to represent a certain idea. So one is the wise son who actually really wants to know, and the other one is the Rasha who's actually knocking things. And the Tom is like, oh, I don't know what's going on, but like not really that interested and not interested, somewhere along the middle. And then you got the fourth son, who's not for nor against, just complete, like, doesn't really care or doesn't know. Actually, and doesn't care is more like the Tom. Does she know that show? Just unaware. So what do? You tell him? Well, he didn't ask a question. He doesn't care about the answer. A person who doesn't even know what's flying and know what's going on, you can't just tell them things because they're not interested. People who ask a question want an answer. Everyone asked a question so far. The Chacham asks, what's going on? What are all these testimonies? The Russia is being negative. Okay, we got that. The Tom says, what is this? So they're asking, they're saying something. If someone says something, you can answer them. But they're not saying anything. What are you answering them? So so what do we do? So before you say anything to them, you have to get them interested. At ptachlo, you open the conversation. Get them to ask. Get them to ask. And only if they're interested can you now tell them. Shenemar. Now we find a pasuk with this idea again. Not that the pasuk's talking about a specific a pasuk that talks about the son. It's just a beautiful idea from the pasuk, as it says, "V'higadata lebincha bayom ahu lemor." Okay, bavur zeh Hashem li. Now look at this pasuk. V'higadata lebincha bayom ahu lemor. What does the pasuk say? You'll speak to your son on that day, saying, "Isn't this redundant? Speak to your son on that day and tell him." Why does it just say, "Tell your son that Hashem did this for me"? What does it mean, tell your son, tell him? Speak to your son on that day, saying. It's completely redundant. Your barber looks at this much closer and he says something beautiful. He says, "V'higadata lebincha bayom ahu." Get him into it. We'll see in a moment some beautiful idea in Diktuk in Hebrew too. Get your son into it. Make the son say what's going on. Get your child to speak up and say what's going on over here. That's how he explains Pshat here in the pasuk, and then you tell him what this is. You have to get your son into it and let the son say what's going on. Only then you can talk to that child. We'll see where we're going with this in a moment. So this is beautiful, but nonetheless, where in the world do we see these words? Tell your son and make him say. I want to share with you that the Torah has a lot of words, a lot of synonyms to the word say something. Let me just see what Nachman's saying. Time Torah uses this style. I'll tell him, relay me to teach him. Okay, well, to teach him children, the same thing. Yes, 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 yes. And here we're going to see something really interesting about the words. Look at this. In Hebrew, there are many ways of saying the word to say. For example, okay, Moshe Allah El Elokim, Hashem called out to him, Vayikra, to call out. Hey, that's one way of saying to say. Lemor, Kotomar lebeit Yaakov, Vetaged libnei Yisrael. So, Tomar lebeit Yaakov, Taged libnei Yisrael, go tell Beit Yaakov and tell the Jewish nation. It's the same thing. Rashi brings the famous medrash. Beit Yaakov refers to the women and Bnei Israel refers to the men. And he says, to the men you can give it to them. Taged, not tagid. It's a different word completely, okay? But taged from the word of tell them firmly and strongly. But tomar, speak gentle. Okay, when you tell Beit Yaakov, okay, look at Rashi, brings the Mechilta. Elu anashim tomar lem melashon raka. Speak gently. So Hashem commands Moshe to speak gently. So now we know that the word lemor means gentle. Now we're going to learn something unbelievable. We see in the Torah many times it says, "Vaydaber Hashem and Moshe lemor." Okay? Second. Here we go. Torah many times says, "Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor." Vaydaber Hashem Moshe limor. The commentaries say ledaber. Ledaber means firmly. Tzav is a commandment. Vaydaber spoke firmly. So Hashem spoke to Moshe firmly, and he told Moshe, relay these words to the nation. So Vaydaber Hashem and Moshe limor doesn't mean Hashem spoke to Moshe instead. That's redundant. What it means, the Lavush brings in, many other Rishonim bring, it means Hashem told Moshe, go tell these things to the nation. So Hashem told Moshe two things. First of all, I'm giving it to you firmly as is. And I'm asking you two things. Please relay it to the nation, but please relay it to them gently. Please relay it to them nicely. Please relay it to them in a way where Torah has beauty. So Hashem spoke to Moshe firmly and told him to relay it in a nice way. Kotomar lebeit Yaakov. Okay, kotomar lebeit Yaakov. Speak gently, speak nicely. So we see that the bear is firm. We see that lemor is gentle. There's something even more gentle than gentle, and that is lehagid. Lehagid means you don't even say. You're telling a story. Lehagid. We see this, by the way, in Lahagid Baboker Chasdecha Vemunatcha Balilot. Okay, we say in Mizmor Shir Liyom Shabbat. We say that we proclaim Hashem's steadfast love at daybreak and the faithfulness each night. So we're not telling, oh, Hashem has love at daybreak. We're like singing it. We're emotionally expressing it. When you're telling a story and you really get into it, that's called lehagid. So now let's go back to what we see about the she'ino yodea lish'ol. The she'ino yodea lish'ol. Second, we had it over here. She'ino yodea lish'ol. Here we go. She'ino yodea lish'ol. What do? At ptachlo, you open up. Shene'emar v'higadato. There's a pasuk in Torah that says that you should tell your story to your child, but not just tell your child, here's what happened. You see at Mitzrayim, here's what we did, here's the halachot. Express it emotionally, like you're talking about the greatness of Hashem at dawnbreak and night, and about the wonders of Hashem. Just sit down and wow, just tell the story. Make it exciting. And if you do that, your child will eventually turn to you and say what's going on. And then you can give the child all the story. Says the Barba now, to the whole essence of the Seder night is that once a year we stop what we do. And once a year we experience, like I think, Connie, I believe you said before, we're reliving, I think you said, right? You said we're reliving the first Pesach, right? You said that? You said that a while ago? That was you, I believe? Right? Yes, no? I think it was you. I can check. Right? We're really reliving the first Pesach, right?
Yes, it was me.
Ah, was you? Great, good. So my memory's still there. So that's exactly what we're doing. We're not sitting down in the Seder night, says the Barber, and saying, listen, here's what happened, here's what we do, here's the halachot, here's everything. On the contrary, we are singing it, we're saying Hallel, we're telling the story, and we're getting, and the emotional, and we also throw in fun stuff, like we give the presents, and it says in the Gemara, they used to give out nuts, and which at that time I guess was pretty fancy, like candies. Some people the Seder night like giving candies to the kids without sugar, of course. But the point is that it's like, make it a happening, and then people are going to go, wow, that's the higadata, make it a happening. And then they're going to go, well, what's tonight? Oh, once they're into it, you could tell them. By the way, it doesn't just apply to children. This even applies if someone's alone at the Seder night. You can't just sit there and say it. You really have to get into it. So just quick summary. Says the Barbanel, we are all the Sheino Yodea Lishol. When we walk into Seder night in our minds, us and everyone at the Seder night are people that walk in and are not interested at the moment the Seder begins. The last thing on their mind is, okay, what was the story? What happened? What do we do? And we're not into it. So you have to get into it. So we're all the Shinoi Dali Shaol. And therefore, the wording that we use, what do we call the the Sefer that we say on Seder night, Haggadah Shel Pesach. We don't say it Amirah Shel Pesach, the saying of Pesach. We don't call it Sefer Pesach. We call it Haggadah. You know why? It's the happening of Pesach. That's literally what it means. The happening of Pesach. So just to put everything together and to summarize and to close. There's a lot of things that we do on Seder night that are unique and special that we don't do throughout the whole year, and we do it as everyone's used to say. So children should ask, the people should ask. We're just going to fine tune that. It's not just about people should ask, but people should realize it's some kind of experience. If you get into the experience, it's not just a story, a physical, technical story of telling a story. It's getting into an environment, getting to a place where actually people are into it, and they are now opened to listening and everything else. And that's the Shinoyu De'ali Sh'ol. That's all of us, as the Abarbanel says, as we call the Haggadah Shel Pesach. So if we actually round back a second to our specific application of Urchatz, and with this the summary of the shir, we get to Urchatz, we see that there are different opinions if you have to wash, if you dip something in liquid. There are different opinions. Some say you wash at the bracha, again, you need to have a certain amount. We mentioned that before. Some say you should wash it out of bracha during the year, and some say you don't during the year. On Pesach night, everyone agrees that you do. Some say actually because it's a special level of holiness. Some for sure wash because they do it throughout the year too. And others will say so people should ask, meaning that we are actually reliving. We're doing something extra special, so people should actually get into it. We do things, even though we may not do it during the year, we actually do it on Seder night to make it special. I just want to end also with a beautiful idea that we brought before of actually we're also reliving, like when they left Mitzrayim, we're reliving Korban Pesach, reliving the year of Beit HaMikdash, a special level of holiness on the Seder night, that we actually do things we may not be makbid on during the year, we actually do them in Pesach for the extra level of holiness, which really both of them are a very similar idea. It's supposed to be a special night. It's way over and above the halacha. It's supposed to be a special night and a very, very special experience. And that's where we're actually going to wash our hands if we're dipping something in liquid, similar to the way it was done in Beit HaMikdash, that extra special, high-level spiritual experience. So I'd like to thank everyone truly for participating this year, and wish everyone Chag Kasher Sameach. We should be Zdoche Bezvat Hashem this year to have to wash because we will have the Beis HaMikdash.
Thank you so much. Great share. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.